To keep a series interesting, fans need characters to root for and support, while also characters to despise. People want to see the bad guys get their just deserts and the good succeed. While villains can certainly be entertaining, House of the Dragon has its fair share of characters who can't win the audience over, even if they're framed as good people relative to this universe. Game of Thrones saw even the best characters suffer immensely, lose to the villain, and die. As such, there is little hope for a happy ending in House of the Dragon, and the worst characters may end up victorious. There is no justice, and the most conniving characters usually win in the end. Even beyond the notion of good versus evil, House of the Dragon is full of morally gray characters, which can make every character unlikable in their own ways. Through 2 seasons of House of the Dragon, viewers are left mixed. Questionable writing and even more questionable decisions have resulted in a cast of characters that is difficult to like despite the best efforts of their actors. More unlikable House of the Dragon characters have been added, as well as reorganizing the order to reflect developments from Season 2. 15. Corlys Velaryon lacks assertiveness. Why does Corlys still stick with 15. Corlys Velaryon lacks assertiveness. Why does Corlys still stick with Rhaenyra? Corlys Velaryon is a man who is always thinking about the Velaryon name and how to ensure it perseveres over time, and how to ensure the Velaryons remain powerful. Corlys even went as far as trying to marry his very young daughter to the much older King Viserys I, which was incredibly gross, to say the least. Afterward, he wasn't shy about calling out Viserys if he disagreed. In the many House of the Dragons episodes since, Corlys lost each of his children, became faced with the possibility of Driftmark being passed to someone who isn't actually a Velaryon, witnessed the brutal death of his brother at the hands of Daemon Targaryen, and lost his wife in battle to forward Rhaenyra's cause. It's ever a wonder why Corlys continues to remain loyal to Team Black, given the amount of pain he's endured and how much of that can be blamed on Team Black. 14. Jacaerys Velaryon is going through his angsty teen phase. Even if Jacaerys conflicts with his mother adds intrigue, House of the Dragon often gets accused of having a little too much bias toward Rhaenyra and the rest of Team Black when they're supposed to be incredibly flawed, just like Team Green. Jacaerys Jace, Velaryon's conflict with his mother, Rhaenyra, throughout Season 2 does highlight the fact that Rhaenyra isn't the best mother herself. It creates necessary drama within Team Black. But for fans who are all in on Rhaenyra and Team Black, Jace's frequent outbursts can be irritating. Jace is always brooding. He's always angry about something. Even in his scenes with just his betrothed Baela Targaryen, he finds little opportunity to relax or laugh. In his defense, he did lose his brother. Not to mention Jace's paranoia that discovering more people with Targaryen blood could rob him of his birthright as heir was understandable, given his parentage. However, his mother's pursuit of these dragon seeds was born in part from Jace's idea, making his oppositional anger and bitterness shortly after whiplash-inducing. 13. Vaemond disrespects his brother and screams in court. For Vaemond Velaryon, sometimes the truth hurts. Vaemond believes he is protecting his house and his blood when he ventures into the throne room and files a petition to have Lucerys removed as heir to Driftmark. Vaemond's anger at a child makes him unlikable, and his outburst leads to his death, even if he may have had a point, since Lucerys' parentage could have led to the fall of Hazu Velaryon, once challengers inevitably arose. Vaemond's brother Corlys was more interested in continuing their house name than their bloodline. However, Vaemond disagrees. He disrespects his brother's decision and begins screaming at Princess Rhaenyra in front of King Viserys, who, even in his bad health, stands and brandishes a knife in her defense. His brutal honesty also doesn't earn him any favors. 12. Ulf has let his rags to riches story go to his head. Ulf should at least show some respect toward Queen Rhaenyra. Ulf is one of the numerous dragon seeds introduced in Season 2 of House of the Dragon. Ulf always told fellow bar patrons of his Targaryen heritage, the bastard child of Prince Baelon Targaryen, which would make him the half-brother of Viserys and Daemon. No one believed him, though. Turns out it was the truth. Ulf was able to claim the dragon Silverwing during the Red Sowing. Ulf let his newfound status go to his head. Since becoming a dragon rider, he's become entitled and rude to anyone around him. This is in contrast to the more honorable dragon seeds like Hugh. Ulf is a character who initially brought much-needed comedy to House of the Dragon, but has begun to grow annoying. 11. Mysaria hasn't been as compelling as Varys or Littlefinger. If nothing else, Mysaria's accent became more convincing. Among characters regularly seen in House of the Dragon, Mysaria had one of the worst first impressions. It wasn't for a specific action, but rather her accent. Mysaria is from E.T., so having a different accent is natural. However, some fans found her accent too distracting and her dialogue difficult to understand at times. Mysaria's accent is improved in House of the Dragon Season 2, and fans learn more of her tragic background, making her easier to sympathize with. In general, Mysaria trades/sells secrets and fills a role similar to Larry Strong, as well as Game of Thrones Varys and Littlefinger. In comparison to the other three, Mysaria falls short of being as compelling of a character, especially given her alliance with Rhaenyra appears to have only solidified throughout Season 2, leaving fans to question if there truly is a power-grab ulterior motive for her actions. 10. Rhaenyra Targaryen's hands are far from clean from affairs to the Red Sowing. Rhaenyra is no hero. While many people root for Rhaenyra and believe in her cause, she does her fair share of terrible things that make her unlikable. Rhaenyra misleads her best friend, Alicent Hightower, who has an affair with Harwin Strong, and stresses out King Viserys with her rebelliousness, knowing full well how much he already has on his plate. Rhaenyra even goes so far as to fake Laenor's death, leaving his parents in grief. Throughout House of the Dragon Season 2, her decisions have yielded more scrutiny, such as the many dragon seeds who died during the Red Sowing, as well as making a move on Mysaria just after she explained her past abuse. All of this, while fans have wanted Rhaenyra to be more active in the conflict instead of wandering around complaining about being cooped up in Dragonstone. Although she is fierce, determined, and smart, it's hard for audiences to get past some of her most questionable and sometimes despicable actions. 9. Viserys Targaryen's weakness led to the current conflict. Viserys is impressively acted by Paddy Considine, but he's a frustrating ruler. From the very first episode, Viserys' decision-making is at the forefront of House of the Dragon. Viserys pushes Aemma way too far with his desire for a son. As a result, she suffered many miscarriages and so much loss. Viserys even chooses, without consulting Aemma, to save the child and risk Aemma's life, all because of that desire. Viserys also creates many difficulties for others, most notably Rhaenyra. He doesn't tell his daughter that he is going to marry Alicent, her best friend, before publicly announcing it. Viserys makes Rhaenyra his heir, but also makes her succession incredibly difficult, which eventually sparks the Dance of the Dragons. Though Viserys can be sympathetic, and Vizzy T has garnered a lot of fans thanks in part to Paddy Considine's performance, he makes far too many mistakes in House of the Dragon to be universally likable. 8. Daemon is a charming Targaryen character. However, the Rogue Prince has a long list of horrid deeds. Daemon Targaryen is a villain who fans love to hate, as he is capable of such evil while also being witty and clever. However, regardless of his charm, Daemon is a murderer and a neglectful parent. He also seduces and uses his niece in an attempted power grab. Daemon adds so much unnecessary stress to his brother Viserys' plate. All this stress, coupled with his declining health, is what kills the king. Daemon mocks the loss of Viserys' son and only serves to make people's lives harder. His story arc in Season 2 also was the subject of frustration as his hallucination scenes dragged on for much of the season. This significantly reduced his role, but not before he orchestrated the gruesome death of King Aegon II's son, thanks to blood and cheese. Daemon may add some interesting conflict to House of the Dragon, but he's a despicable character. 7. Aemond is an entitled bully. Aemond is equal parts nuanced and cruel. Aemond Targaryen takes whatever he wants, regardless of other people, and is incredibly entitled. Like Aegon, Aemond believes himself to be above others, which leads him to take Lena's dragon right after her death. Vhagar should have been claimed by one of Lena's daughters, but as they grieved, the dragon was stolen from them. Aemond shows no remorse, only stating that they should have claimed Vhagar sooner and that she had chosen him. Years later, Aemond continues to take an aggressive approach as Aegon's counsel. He has a great strategic mind and is a very complex character as a whole, but his ultimate goal of supplanting his brother remains clear. As Aegon lay burnt to a crisp after the battle at Rook's Rest, Aemond intended to finish him off, but he was caught by Criston Cole. Aemond is willing to fight for the throne and sees himself as the rightful ruler over his brother, but he is a bully just like Aegon. 6. Aegon's reign of terror is in full force. Frequent abuse and ineptitude has made Aegon a terrible Targaryen ruler. Aegon is a violent bully. The worst of what Aegon does is likely yet to come as he is still so young, but he is already an incredibly unlikable and awful person. Aegon treats his own family terribly, even those he's closest to. He is also renowned for visiting brothels, fathering bastards, and attending events where children are forced to fight one another. Aegon assaults Diana, one of the maids, and receives next to no punishment for it. Despite this, fans consider Tom Glencarney's performance one of the biggest highlights of House of the Dragon Season 2 because, in a similar way to Jack Gleeson as King Joffrey Baratheon in Game of Thrones, Glencarney makes Aegon a character fans love to hate. His lack of consequences and unpredictability only spurs his reign of terror and causes fans to wish for his comeuppance, even beyond his injuries at Rook's Rest. 5. Blood and cheese are dim-witted child murderers. Between a dead baby and an abused dog, blood and cheese are easy to hate. Blood and cheese were only really around for one episode, the second season premiere, but their dastardly deed produced one of House of the Dragon's most horrid and shocking moments. Recruited by Daemon after the death of Lucerys Velaryon, Blood and Cheese were sent to assassinate Aemond Targaryen. Blood was a member of the City Watch, while Cheese was a rat catcher, who knew the ins and outs of the Red Keep. Cheese also kicked his loyal dog, which immediately made him unlikable. The two infiltrated the Red Keep and were unable to find Aemond. They instead took Queen Helena Targaryen hostage and made her watch as they killed her and Aegon's son. Easily one of the most evil deeds in House of the Dragon, and how the sequence was approached in the show was a controversial change from House of the Dragon's source material. Not only are Blood and Cheese very unlikable, they were also the first sign that Season 2 wouldn't go as book readers had hoped. 4. Alicent Hightower becomes diabolical and cruel. Fans thought her final scenes in House of the Dragon Season 2 was a betrayal. Young Alicent, going along with her father's wishes, regularly engages with Viserys. It is clear what Otto's motivation is, but Alicent goes along with it anyway. She is very protective of her and Viserys' children, but it appears even that has its limits. In an attempt to avenge Aemond after Lucerys slashes him in the eye, Alicent tries to stab one of Rhaenyra's children in the face. Instead of harming the children, Alicent slices Rhaenyra's arm. Alicent later brushes over Aegon's diabolical assault and plots to have him placed on the Iron Throne, despite his terrible and violent nature. But by the end of House of the Dragon Season 2, Alicent seemed willing to sacrifice at least some of her children just to end the conflict and give the win to her old friend, Rhaenyra. Many fans thought this was a complete betrayal of not only Alicent's character up until this point, but also how she's depicted in the source material. It's easily one of the most contentious parts of House of the Dragon Season 2, and watching how Alicent was written has only increased concerns over future seasons. So while Alicent was a rather likable character at the beginning of House of the Dragon, she became too cruel and questionably written for audiences to root for her. 3. Otto Hightower is a deceptive traitor. Otto is a man who only cares to keep a Hightower on the Iron Throne. Otto Hightower seemed like a faithful hand, but it was soon revealed that he was an unlikable and deceitful character. Alicent was right in Episode 9 when she called out Otto for using her as a pawn in his game. He had his young daughter visit Viserys right after his wife and son died so that she could charm him. Otto wants his blood on the Iron Throne and would do anything to make that happen. Otto uses his contacts to spy on Rhaenyra and attempts to remove her as competition for his future grandchildren. Once he succeeds in getting Aegon on the throne, his bloodline will continue as rulers of the Seven Kingdoms. Otto manipulates people who trust him for his gain, and plots to have Rhaenyra, her kids, and Daemon killed as they threaten Aegon's claim. 2. Larys strong lacks empathy, even for family. Larys will go to disturbing lengths to get what he wants. Lord Larys is a member of House Strong, but becomes a loyal advisor to Alicent. In an attempt to help Alicent, Larys arranges the murder of his father and brother. He kills his family members to earn the Queen's favor, but she hasn't actually requested their deaths. They died horrifically by fire. However, Larys' villainy doesn't stop there. House of the Dragon also sees Larys mutilate prisoners to allow Otto to return to his position as Hand of the King. Larys is always scheming and times his moves well. Plus, his affinity for Alicent's feet is a great way to make viewers uncomfortable. Because of his unwavering ambition, Larys is a violent, unlikable, and despicable character in House of the Dragon. 1. Criston Cole is a bitter murderer. Criston is easily the least liked character in House of the Dragon. Why do fans dislike Criston Cole? Starting from the beginning, Criston begins House of the Dragon as the love interest of Princess Rhaenyra and appears to be a kind and loyal man. However, the tide quickly turns when Criston feels rejected by her, and he decides to become Alicent's servant and guard out of bitterness. Criston then kills Laena's lover Joffrey because he has a connection to Rhaenyra. Years later, Criston and Alicent have frequently hooked up, both dishonoring their titles. He is scary and volatile, with occasional bouts of anger, such as his killing of Lord Beesbury. Criston's behavior altered him from a doting and loving man to a bitter and violent person who audiences couldn't support. Cole's actions are far more tame compared to most other characters, but the scorned former lover has become a frequent target of fan criticism purely for being an unlikable person who offers next to nothing else to the show.